The Virtual Boy, Nintendo's red-headed stepchild, released in 1995, was meant to usher in a new age of gaming, and instead it gave people headaches and lasted a year with only 14 games releasing in North America. 30 years later, a full complete in box set will set you back about $4,800. In 2004, it was significantly less. Welcome to Retronomics, the series that follows price trends in video games. And man, video game collecting is an expensive hobby nowadays. Seems like everyone wants to get in on the action, and it makes me wish that I could go back in time when games were super cheap. Well, I don't have a time machine, and if I did, I probably would tell myself to buy 100 Bitcoin instead, but what I do have is this. It is the Digital Press Collector's Guide from 2004. Over 500 pages of video game prices, rarity guides, and descriptions of games all in one place. I did a video a while back about the NES game prices that I found in a manual of the Generation Next, and that sent me down a rabbit hole of old prices. Price charting only goes back to 2007, and not every game at the time was listed, so I tracked down this book along with the first version to see what prices were like before all those YouTubers ruined it. Now, I don't really believe that YouTubers are the sole cause of price increasing, but that's not what this video is about. It's about prices from 20 years ago. We'll go through the Virtual Boy library from 2004 and see what prices are today to see how things have changed and what remained the same. If you like this type of content, consider subscribing to the channel. I plan on making more of these older pricing videos, especially of consoles that have more than 14 titles in them. I also made a supplemental blog on retronomics.substack.com, which includes more stats that didn't make it into this video. Alright, let's get into some historic prices, but first a little breakdown on how they calculated prices back then. It wasn't necessarily what they were going for, but a suggested price if you were to offer a price to somebody who wasn't sure what it was worth or they just wanted to sell it. So think eBay sold price less fees and shipping. The prices are also based on complete in box condition. There are some systems in this book that consider loose prices like NES games, but Virtual Boy, they assumed that most people still had the boxes for the games, which would make some sense. Back when a system would fail, stores would just liquidate unsold stock, and it was easy to scoop up boxes for this stuff for pennies on the dollar. The Atari Lynx, for example, it's still easy to find new old stock games in 2025. But enough stalling, here are the 14 North American Virtual Boy games and the console complete in box prices for 2004. No copies were over $100 complete in box. 4 games were $5 or less. Complete in box. Granted, these are the most common games, and Mario Tennis was a pack-in title, so not a lot of people actually purchased the complete in-box version, which technically would make the CIB version more rare, but this guide is based on adding games to your collection that you actually would want to play, and who wants the complete in-box version when you already have the loose version? On the more expensive end is Jack Bros at a whopping $80 complete. Jack Bros is one of the rarer games out there in general, and it's arguably the best Virtual Boy game. The way that they implement the 3D as a top-down perspective that involves you going further down is something that I haven't really seen done since. It's a really unique game and totally worth the $80. But at the current price, $2,000? Not really. And this is the current value of all of the games and the Virtual Boy according to price charting as of January 2025. I know inflation is bad, but this is ridiculous. For the record, inflation rate from 2004 to November of 2024, which is when the government has released the numbers, is about 70%. So if prices had stayed the same in line with inflation, they'd look something like this. The top 3 most expensive titles on this list in 2004 are also the top 3 in 2025. Jack Bros leading in the pack at a whopping $2,000, which is 2,500 times more expensive than it was back in 2004. And if you account for inflation, it's only a 1,500% increase in value, but still, that's a lot of money. Considering the current climate of collecting, it's not really surprising that Mario Tennis Complete in Box moved up to number 5 on this list compared to being at ranked 14 back in 2004. The CIB version was uncommon back then, and while it's still considered uncommon now, it fetches a significantly higher price now that collectors care more about this stuff. Other than that, most of the games didn't change more than a couple of ranks. Poor Virtual League Baseball is still stuck at number 15 and will likely remain that way for the foreseeable future, although it did increase 1,000%. I'll leave the raw stats on the blog and finish with an analysis. Obviously, video game prices have gotten pretty high, but there's always been this debate on why the prices have increased the way that they did. And while people will blame YouTubers for talking about games and momentarily rising the price, no one really talks about who is buying these games. And I think it's pretty obvious that the game collecting hobby has finally matured into a collector first hobby. Most people who watch my videos started collecting over a decade ago, or at least got into it for the same reason that I did. We want to play the games first, and our collections are a library. But now there are people who are buying the game just to have it on their shelf as a display piece. Actually more than what they were back when I started collecting. Not saying that everybody does this, but Jak Bros isn't that expensive because it's one of the best Virtual Boy games and because it's one of the rarest. It's because it's a rare game. It's published by Atlus. It's also the first Shin Megami Tensei game to come stateside. It's really hard to explain, but the collectors who wrote this digital press book didn't take that into account when assigning the value of $80 20 years ago. They called it Gauntlet with Halloween characters, i.e. that's what to expect in the game. It's one of the reasons why Clay Fighter Sculptor's Cut is listed as only $19 in this book. The game collecting scene has evolved beyond just gamers, because if it was still the same game collecting scene, Waterworld would probably be about half the price of Jak Bros, or just a little bit more. Sure, it's not the best game, but it is still a rare title for the Virtual Boy. But it obviously doesn't have a ton of overlap with other fandoms. Anyway, I hope over the next year I support my theory with more videos like this one. Let me know what console you want me to cover from 2004 or 2005, and be sure to check out my blog, retronomics.substack.com, for more nerdy stats. And if you have any constructive feedback on this series, I'm open to it. I'm actually tuning the series to be a bit light on the numbers and more focused on the analysis. So let me know in those comments down below, and if you want to, follow me on social media at SnickTendo. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Nick, and I'll see you next time.